Line's good.
Never on!
Whoa.
Hard! Hardly.
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
The hair high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham, Scott alongside. As always, hello, Scott.
Sean, what's happening? It's nighttime as we're recording. We a little, behind the curtain here. We don't usually record this late, but I don't know. How are you liking it?
It's different, but I'll say we usually record 4 or 5 o'clock or something. That was our normal schedule during the pandemic, at least. And at least at this time of year, it doesn't really change that much because it's still dark outside my window, regardless of if it's 4:30 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I feel like I have to put my blinds down a little bit more. Probably more chance of people being outside. I don't know. But you're right. It is dark. But I've already had dinner. So, usually my brain is like firing on all cylinders. But now a lot of my energy might be devoted to digesting my food. So we'll see how this goes.
Hopefully it goes well. And we don't hear any of that process, Scott. We are an audio show.
Yes. Hopefully. And also as an audio show, you can't see everybody, but I got my new glasses.
Hey, how do they feel?
Well, I kind of miss my old glasses, but I'm getting used to them.
Okay. They're a very similar style to your old glasses, Scott.
Similar. They feel a bit bigger up and down ways. What is that? Vertically?
Yeah. That is the style of the time.
That it is. But I'm ready to talk about curling, so.
Yeah, you know what else is the style of the time, Scott? Is Grand Slam of curling. That is in style right now.
Oh, segue.
As we just had one over the weekend, the Canadian Open was held in Camrose, Alberta. And let's just talk about the winners. Team Fujisawa, Team Botcher. Scott, between the two winners, which one do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about Fujisawa and her team, as posted on Twitter by, I think, the Grand Slam or Sportsnet or something, calling them the first Asian team to win a Grand Slam event. Was pointed out that Team Wang Bingyu had won something, but I guess that was before the current iteration of the Grand Slam. So pretty big deal, right?
Yeah, I agree. It is a big deal, and maybe Sportsnet should count things that happened before they owned it, or maybe they shouldn't. I don't know, because then some people would have 400 Grand Slam victories. So, and who knows what a major was before then? Of course, who knows what a major is now? So, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a pretty big accomplishment for a team from Asia to win one of these events, even though they've been competing in them for so long, because there's great teams from all over the world. Having not had a team from Asia win sort of surprised me already. Like when I was thinking about it, I was like, really? They haven't? Like one of the Korean women's teams hasn't won something. Even this team, I was like, oh, I'm surprised they haven't won something yet. So like I say, a pretty cool accomplishment, great thing. Do you think it means anything going forward, or is it just it's a good team that won a Spiel, business as usual?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's a good team that won a Bonspiel. That's what happens. Yeah. And I think, Scott, that's what all of these are. Right? I don't think we've necessarily overreacted to any one event. So maybe when Anna Hasselberg went on that run a few years ago of winning all of them, we maybe made a big deal about that. But when you win one, it's great accomplishment. Obviously, it's a great field, but it's a Spiel, right? It's a 5-day Spiel, and it's great that they won. But let's not. I don't think you can extrapolate any more out of it than this is really cool. We already know they're a good team. They were in the playoffs at the Olympics, won a medal, right? They win the bronze medal there, and so I don't know. I would argue that the bronze medal is a bigger deal than winning a slam, but that's me.
Sure, and I think the Tracy Fleury team, when they got put together and ended up having a really great year, I think it started at a slam. But you're right. This team is very accomplished, medalist in the Olympics. Like, they don't really have anything to prove to most curling fans. So congratulations for your win. A lot of money that will help them in their season, I'm sure.
Well, I think the other thing too with this particular slam for any of the international teams, well, maybe not all the international teams, because some of them are going to go play national championships now. Not all, but some. Japan and Korea, like, they play theirs in the summertime. So it's not like they're building to anything other than the World Championship in a few months. Right. So the question now is, with the Canadian teams shifting to playdowns, and then the Scotties international teams, like the Swiss nationals, the Scottish nationals, like those teams are going to have to go play those. Where are their games going to come from, or what events are there to play in? I assume that they'll go home for a bit, and there's obviously other great teams in Japan, great teams in Korea as well. Maybe it's some games with some Chinese teams. I don't know. I'm sure there are some spiels there that they will play in, but it's a question of, do you keep, or how do you keep that momentum going? Whereas if you win the one in October, that's easier to springboard, at least in a North American context, because that's where you have just so many more events in the season. It feels this time of year, maybe this is where you take a couple weeks off or do whatever you're going to do as you gear up for the World Championship. And I would say this, whether or not they won this weekend or not, they're a playoff team at the World Championship.
Yeah, especially in the context of 6 playoff teams. That's right. I know we've been doing that for 4 years already, but I still forget sometimes. Right. So
yeah, and I think maybe even more so than being impressed by the fact that they won, I think the way they won the final, like they were in total control of that game against Carrie Anderson, and that's hard to do against Carrie Anderson in any circumstance, to just be in control of the end from the first end to the last. And Team Anderson was chasing the whole time. Val had a couple tough misses, and it started in the first end where she threw a draw to the back 12-foot, which you really never see from her. So they struggled with the ice a little bit early, and Fujisawa, to their credit, they did not let them get back up off the mat. They took that too early, and that was it. They were off and running. That maybe was more impressive than just the fact that they won the event. The way they won that last game, with a very thorough post-to-post victory over arguably the best team in the world.
Yeah, no doubt. Anderson had some shots to, capitalize on her hammers and stuff, but missed them. And you're right. Team Fujisawa didn't let them off the hook later on down the game, because that's something that can easily happen, right? You get up and you maybe lose focus a bit, but they didn't, and were great post to post, like you say.
On the men's side, Brendan Botcher, this formation of the Botcher team, they get their first big event victory since they were put together in the summer. They come out victorious against someone.
Hold on. I was just looking at it, Sean.
They watched some of that game.
Nicholas Edin.
Yes.
Of course.
Over a returning Nicholas Edin, who had a miraculous recovery from knee surgery. When we talked after the injury, there was speculation, and not us speculating idly, from the reports that the World Championship might be in jeopardy for him. And here he is playing at the Slam. So a great return for him. Hopefully he's feeling okay after playing all weekend on that surgically repaired knee. But Scott, similar to the Fujisawa thing, as we just talked about, you don't want to make too much out of this for Brendan Botcher. Obviously, the four of them have won Grand Slams before, first time together. And I think for them, didn't really see the results that we thought early in the season. This is a nice win here, sets them up for the Alberta playdowns and going into those. And remember, of course, Kevin Cooey is going to be there this year, which is always kind of fun to see that. If you're not, of course, a competitor in the Alberta men's playdowns. It's fun for the rest of us when both of those teams are there. So it's nice in that respect. But same thing. Let's not necessarily overreact is the way I feel. But how did you feel about them getting their first or biggest win of the season?
Well, Sean, they're a team that's they're interesting from the context of I find them like a little bit hard to root for, which is crazy because I like all of those guys. Ben Hebert and Mark Kennedy are super personable. Brett Gallant too, like great player. And Brendan Botcher, obviously a great skip. I'm looking at their line scores, right? And they've given up 3 points, 2 points, 2 points, 0 points, 2 points, 3 points. So they're playing this kind of low scoring defensive style, it would seem, that's harder to like latch onto when you're tuning into a Grand Slam, because I find when I want to watch the Grand Slam games, I just want there to be interesting angles and games and stuff. And when they're lower scoring, especially in an 8-end game, it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to like get engaged with the game. Do you find the same thing? Or
Yeah, a little bit. And because one of the things that is talked about in the 8 versus 10 end debate is, well, if they're going to blank ends in the 10 end game, just not play them. But the problem with the 8 end game is if you get the hammer off the top and you burn a couple ends, it gets late really early. And if you have the hammer 0-0 fourth end, that's pretty good for you. So I almost think that the shorter game incentivizes to a certain degree going for those blanks. And for Botcher in particular, obviously Brad Thiessen's a great player. Brett Gallant throws the high stuff, the high hard stuff, a little better, a little more accurately than Brad does. And I would say certainly, I mean, Mark Kennedy probably throws everything better than anybody else in the world potentially as a thrower. So he's, Darren, I think Darren likes to throw the hard ones. I would argue that Darren's greatest strength hitting wise is board hack weight. I think that's really, he's kind of in that Richard Hart mode for me, where he's really deadly with the lighter weights and can make the bigger ones. So for Brendan as a strategist, as a guy who isn't scared to go to the end of a game, I think 0-0, if he has the hammer in the first end, those two guys, those changes in his lineup present that opportunity. It makes it more possible to do that than perhaps he had in years past.
For sure. I while you were saying that, Sean, I was running the numbers. They've blanked 24% of the ends in which they've had the hammer.
Wow.
So I obviously there was a couple of games where it was like 2-1 or whatever, right? Where it was more than the usual. Mm-hmm. But if they're getting hammer 4 times in an 8-end game and they're blanking at least one of those, it's, maybe it doesn't sound that bad that way, but it's I don't know.
Yeah, and obviously not all blanks are created equal. We did see a couple blanks this weekend with double takeouts on the last shot and rolling out and all that. So they're not all created equal. But even exciting blanks aren't that exciting sometimes,
Yeah, they sort of leave you feeling like, oh,
all that for nothing.
Yeah, and I'll bring up too, Sean, they did win the Okotoks Classic, ATB Okotoks, earlier in the year, which had a pretty high points available on it. So it was a big win, not as big as the Grand Slams, but so it wasn't their first, but maybe not the roaring start that we expected from this team.
Yeah, and certainly they'll get into the Briar one way or the other with the 3 wild card teams. They'll have a spot. It's just a question of, are they Team Alberta? Are they a wild card team? Do they even care whether or not you're that? Like, it doesn't really affect the seeding necessarily in terms of what pool you're going to be in. Yeah. So, they're going to, that's not to say they're not going to try. Obviously, you're going to try in the provincial championship, but I don't know, it does take a little bit of the steam out of it, unfortunately, for me.
Sean, we talked, I think we talked in the off season about the idea of naming those wildcard teams ahead of provincials. And your point was that the provincial associations wouldn't go for it because they couldn't sell tickets to some of their playdowns.
I think that is the case, that the provinces like having everybody there, don't necessarily care if the team that loses is still going to go to the national championship because they're not running it. So
That's right. Yeah.
and I do know that the provincial associations, some of them at least, Manitoba, Ontario, Alberta, like it because and Manitoba, Alberta, more so than Ontario, are going to get more than one team in every year. So it helps the provincial association that way as well. So the compromise that has been struck on that regard, I don't think is going to change anytime soon because Curling Canada has made it a permanent change.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I'd like to see that 1 year, maybe try it before, but anyway.
Well, Scott, talking about territorial provincial playdowns, we have some champions in the books here as we look ahead to the Scotties and to the Brier. This past weekend out in Chilliwack, Clancy Grandy, newly British Columbian team, she beat
Corinne Brown
in the final of the BC playdowns in Alma, Quebec. Laurie St. George gets through. Third time at the Scotties for her. First provincial championship because she was decided by Curling Quebec during the bubble. And then again last year when they couldn't run playdown. So for as much as we're like, oh, like she's a bit of a Scotties vet now, first Purple Heart. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool that she finally gets her first.
Yeah. Up north, Haley Burney won Yukon. Familiar name there. It'll be nice to see her back at a Scotties. And Carrie Galusha had to travel all the way up to Inuvik to get the Northwest Territories Championship, going a cool 8-0 there. She is now one Scotties appearance shy, or will be after this year, of tying Colleen Jones's record for most Scotties appearances at 19. And before Christmas, we had Nunavut decided as Bridget McPhail won that championship. And we've, of course, seen her before. And obviously, Carrie Anerson will be there as Team Canada. So, Scott, at this point, we have 6 teams decided for the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. Again, Carrie Anderson, Clancy Grandy, Laurie St. George, Haley Burney, Carrie Galusha, Bridget McPhail. How many playoff teams do you think we have so far?
Playoffs or championship pool?
Oh, yeah, championship pool. Yeah, that's different now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've got 2 championship pool contenders out of that 6.
Okay.
The one I wanted to say 2 things about these playdowns. The first is that Carrie Galusha, based on line scores, may have played into the 10th end once.
She's really good.
Yeah, it was like a real beatdown. But they had some struggles with the ice plant there up in Inuvik. So there were some delays with the games, and they had to sort of play all their games on the last day. Good on them for winning that event. It's never easy to win a provincial or territorial championship. And in the BC Scotties, Sean, this is like really something because Corinne Brown scored 5 points in the third end.
Wow.
And went up 5-3. I don't know about you, but if I give up a 5, I don't necessarily always put my head down and start grinding back away. But credit to Clancy Grandy and her team, young team there out of Vancouver, and just kept going and managed to win in an extra. Pretty devastating, I'd say, for Corinne Brown. Was the favorite, the class of the field going in, to have that sort of slip through her fingers. It'll be tough to rebound. I don't think she'll be in the mix for a wild card spot.
No, she's not. She's not from Manitoba, so no, she probably.
So no,
probably. Won't
yeah,
be.
I mean, which is too bad because they're a really good young team. Nice to see them sort of progress and get better year over year. That said, the Clancy Grandy's team, again, another young team, that she's taken on the skip role for, and new faces is never bad either. So, but a pretty interesting game in that final there.
Yeah, I think it helps if you give up 5 if you're up 3-0 already, right? I think it's easier to park if, all right, you got this 3-0 lead. You're like, oh man, I was up 3-0. Oh damn! But you're in the game. You're down 2 with the hammer, right? You're in a position where you can come back and win that game. In terms of playoffs or championship pools, I think we have 3, maybe 4 teams that will challenge. Remember, Kerry Galusha made it into that pool last year, and you just praised
I forgot.
Grandy.
I forgot about Carrie Anderson too. So sorry.
Yeah. I think she might have a chance to make it into the championship pool if they get a couple lucky breaks, key misses from the other side at big points. Maybe they can sneak in there. I think, and when we look at those teams, right, we obviously haven't decided the heavy hitters so far of Alberta, Manitoba, and I don't know if Ontario still counts as a heavy hitter outside of Rachel Holman at this point. There are some teams coming up that might get to that point, but we're not quite there yet. So we still have those 3 ones to decide. Obviously, Kristen McCarville could be coming out of Northern Ontario, a really good team there. Saskatchewan is kind of open now. Robin Silvernagel's back in the mix. Sherry Anderson, I assume, will play because that's what Sherry Anderson does. And then out east, obviously, Andrea Kelly made the playoffs last year, got to Sunday. So that's a team that can threaten. Suzanne Burke can win games. She comes out of PEI. I think we're looking at a pretty good field with the teams that we already have decided. This should be a fun event.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Scotties. As you say, your favorite event of the season. For me too, it's right up there, and it's the first one, right? So you're kind of like, oh yeah, like curling is on 3 times a day. That's amazing.
Yeah. The only problem, as somebody who lives in Eastern time, it's in Kamloops.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot. I didn't think about that, Sean. But yeah, you're right. Whatever. I'll be tired for a week. No big deal.
There you go. That's a spirit. On the men's side, Brad Gushu, of course, will be there as Team Canada. Jacques Gauthier, formerly, of course, of Manitoba, won a World Junior Curling Championship. He picked up the other 3 players that Tyler Tardy used to play with. They go and win British Columbia with Jacques as the import there. Felix Asselin, he wins Quebec, so he will be heading back to the Brier, 2nd year in a row that he will be throwing the final stones at the Brier, first time there as the skip. Whitehorse, out of Whitehorse, Thomas Scoffin wins Yukon again, and Jake Higgs, another familiar name that we've seen before, he will be coming out of Nunavut, making a return appearance. So there's only one so far rookie squad for the Brier. Now, of course, still a lot of teams to be determined, but that rookie squad, Scott, should be a lot of fun to see given each of their respective pedigrees. They've all won Canadian Junior Championship, World Junior Championships, not together, the 4 of them, but that's going to be a fun addition to the Brier field.
Yeah, big time. They beat Brent Pierce in the final, who was last year's representative out of BC. I'll give a plug here for John Cullen's Substack. If you are interested in hearing Cullen talk about curling stuff, he's got a Substack newsletter. Go ahead and subscribe to that. He was at the event as the 5th for a team whose name I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but they didn't make it too far, and then was broadcasting the event too. So has a lot of good insights in that newsletter about the week that was in BC. And you're right, Sean, having Jacques Gauthier and this team in the field, I think is going to be great to sort of revitalize some of the field at the Brier. That's, Matt Dunstone's team sort of started that. Brendan Botcher sort of populating the younger ranks of the curling world. but seeing even more of it is going to be great, especially at the start of a quad where, this could set the table for the next 4 years. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, we saw it on the women's side the past couple of years with Mackenzie Zacharias and her team making that debut appearance in the bubble, and then last year improving on that. We'll see what happens. They're going to be the favorites out of BC if they stay together for a few years at the very least. So if they can get these return appearances, they could certainly do some damage out of BC, and we'll get more BC games on our TVs, which is good. I like the BC logos for these events.
Yeah, their colors are great.
Yeah. Another piece of news as we head into playdown season, Mike McEwen had a lineup shuffle. Jonathan Buke is no longer with the squad. They all wish each other well in their future endeavors. So there you go. That's a thing that happened. No real insight into why. Nobody said anything. They're just not playing together anymore. Things happen. So Joey Hart is going to step into the team to play lead for the Ontario Playdowns. If that name sounds somewhat familiar to you, that's because he was the 5th at the 2016 Brier for Team Glenn Howard. You say, wait, how does he know Glenn Howard? That's because he's Richard Hart's kid. And Richard Hart is going to be there as the coach for the team. So the Harts are back in business in Ontario here, Scott. I don't know if this, and this isn't any disrespect to Joey Hart, I would probably say this for any front end shakeup at this time of year. I don't know if it really moves the needle or changes betting odds for who's going to win the Brier, but it is a change in Ontario for a team that you would expect to be in the playoffs and a real threat to win the Ontario Tankard.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the coaching addition is as big a one as the player, playing lead. So they're not. I don't think they're going to be the favorites out of Ontario, but they're like you say, a favorite to make the playoffs, no doubt. So I don't know, Sean. Does this count as our bold prediction that some team will break up messily?
I don't know if it was
messy when you wish everyone well.
Yeah, I don't know if it's messy enough. I mean, it was abrupt, certainly. Yeah. But I don't know. I think I haven't heard anything from Jonathan Buke yet, and the team statement was nice. So I don't know if it counts as messy.
Okay.
It's not well timed.
No. Maybe we can talk to Jonathan about betting or something, and see if anything slips.
Or even just lead him along. So that McEwen fellow, see if he bites. If we just make something up, the way they do on reality shows. Mike McEwen said that he hated you. What is your response? Like, just totally lie or do something like that.
Yeah, I guess we could totally lie.
We're not journalists. We try to be accurate, but we're not journalists.
Yeah, there you go. I took a journalism course once.
Oh, damn it. So... we can't do it now. Now we have to try to be as accurate as we can still. Come on.
Now we need integrity. I'm sorry.
All right. Too bad. So that is the news on the provincial playdown front. Another piece of news, things that's going on right now, out in beautiful Lake Placid, New York. It is the World University Games. Canada is competing on both sides, and a bit of a struggle so far for the Canadian women. Abby Marks and her team, they sit at 3-5. They are potentially in line to get into a playoff spot if things go really right for them, but it's going to be a long haul and probably unlikely, unfortunately, for them to make it in. On the men's side, however, a little better for Owen Purcell and his team. They are 5-2 at the moment, tied for second place with the Americans and the Swiss, but the Koreans and Swedes right on their heels at 4-3, really mashed up there in the middle, in part because Brazil and the Czech Republic are both 0-7. So teams are getting those two wins and then kind of beating up on each other a little bit. But hopefully for Owen Purcell and his team, they can get into the playoffs. He's made a few really nice ones. There was a guard just over the hog line, and he made an absolute perfect run back to a stone on the button to score there. So he's made some beauties there, as is Abby Marks too. It's just things have gone a little worse for her, but well done for those two teams, showing out well for Canada so far in Lake Placid.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the playoff format, Sean? Do you know?
I think it's 4 teams, semifinals, final.
Semifinals, finals
is what I think it is. Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, I was looking at the standings, and yeah, there's a chance to sneak in there into the tiebreaker for the playoffs, but unlikely at this time. That's for sure.
Yeah, long odds for sure there for Abby Marks, but again, no shame in what they've done at all. So,
no doubt.
And finally, Scott, we have a listener question.
All right.
So this is from Philip West, and Philip, my apologies for not getting back to you sooner, but I wanted to do this on the show because I thought it'd be interesting for other people. It's a relevant question, I think, for anyone. And we recorded 2 in one day, so we haven't actually recorded in a while. So here's this question. So from Philip, he's bringing his 14-year-old daughter to the Briar this year. Neither of them has ever been. And he says that his daughter has never been to Canada at all. So do we have any recommendations for what they should definitely do, like things that they should make sure that they do, noting that they will only be there for draws 13 to 18?
Okay, so you're at the back half of the draw, right?
Yeah.
You'll be in championship pool category, or will that still be?
I think isn't it each? So 7 draws per pool. So I think 14 is the last of the preliminary play. So they're bridging between the two.
Perfect. Okay. That'll be good. Sean, my first instinct for what you have to do is that you have to go to the patch and play tabletop curling, shuffleboard in there. Get on one of those tournaments. They're a lot of fun. And they're fun for everybody, right? Don't take long. You get to try your hand at shuffleboard curling. Pretty good.
Yeah, definitely sign up for those. I believe they call it Crazy Curl there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's sort of the branded name of it. And if you show up, I would say if you play your cards right, but that's not true because it's likely that you will play Fred Cooey, Earl Morris, somebody like that. So definitely sign up for the Crazy Curl events between the draws there at the patch. I assume in London it will be in that room it was for the Continental Cup, so you don't have to go outside. Hopefully, if it's in that same space. I don't know if that space was big enough for a Briar patch or not, but hopefully, either way, it'll be close enough that you will be able to walk. I think they've figured that out. Curling Canada has, so definitely go to the patch. For the afternoon draws, even at that point, there will still be the face-to-face. Hopefully this comes back this year, the autograph session or the up close and personal. Definitely check out at least one of those because it's really fun to see the players on the stage and chatting, and some of the questions about curling, some of them. So it's kind of cool to get a sense of their personality. Now those are determined in advance who it's going to be. So look at the schedule that they have at the patch. Like if there's someone you really want to see, then obviously check them out. But I would recommend it even if there's no one who you're especially a fan of. Like they're really good sessions. The autograph sessions can be fun. You get a quick hello with the players. You can shake their hand, get a photo, whatever it is you want. So hopefully those are all back for you to do those. And I would also say the concourse. There's a lot, like I think people sleep, including us sometimes, on the curling event concourse. Like there's a sneaky good amount of stuff to do up there. There's obviously all the concessions in that, but there is usually like a floor curl up there or whatever Curling Canada's approved vendor is, where you can test out like the curling brooms and stuff. Like there's usually some activities up there on the concourse, so certainly check those out. And in terms of the games themselves, if you've never been to live curling before, it could be a little overwhelming to see the 4 games going at once. So I think everyone develops their own strategy over time. Mine does tend to be to focus for the most part on one game and glance over at other sheets while there's breaks in play. If there's a discussion or something, tends to be my strategy. Other people like to just sort of go shot to shot, look side to side. So just figure out what works best for you, but be prepared to be overwhelmed by trying to follow the action. It's very different than on TV, obviously, and it can be difficult to follow the 4 at once.
Yeah, one thing that I'd suggest is during the daytime draws, which usually have much fewer people there, take advantage of sort of walking around and checking out different games from different vantage points. I would say I've never been, seat checked at a curling event before. So, just go and try sitting for an end in one seat, and then for the next end, go to a different seat. Maybe try watching from behind and see if that's better. Try getting up really close to the point where you can hear the skips talking to their teams about what the strategy is. If you want to learn a little bit more about strategy, that's always really good to do. And like I say, during the daytime, it's a lot easier to move around and sit pretty much wherever you like. But I think that's the most interesting thing to me about watching curling live is being able to get down close and really hear what's going on strategy wise. That said, there's also at all the events we've been to, you can purchase a little radio tuner that will be tuned to the TSN broadcast. So if you want, you can, just put it on one ear and walk around and have the TSN crew in your ear if that helps you to follow the game. That does really mean you have to focus on the TV game. It's harder to focus on other games with that in your ear. But those are some tips that I've got.
Yeah, another thing you could, in theory, do, depending on, say, how much data you have. Like, if you have unlimited data, you could always stream the game on your phone, too. Now, it's going to be delayed, obviously, but that's another option if you want to get the broadcast in your ear. But, yeah, I totally agree. Get up, move around, see the game from different angles. Morning draw is the easiest to do that. Afternoon draw, for sure, should be available to you. Evening draw can depend. Later in the week, it's a little harder, especially if the home team is playing.
Sean, when we were in Kingston there, it was pretty jam-packed by the end. So tougher to do for the night draw, but the daytime draws should be no problem.
Yeah, and I misspoke earlier. I said if it's the same as the Continental Cup, thinking that it was in the same building. It's not. It's over at the Gardens. It's not where the Continental Cup was. Yeah. It's at a bigger building. So I don't know where the patch might be, but I hope it's not a bus. Like, I hope it's a walk.
Yeah. In Kingston, they put it in the parking lot just opposite the arena. So I think there's a room like that in London, if I'm remembering the Gardens correctly.
Yeah. Anyway. And, in terms of patching, I mean, if you have a 14-year-old, the evening draw ends at 10 o'clock, so you're probably not going to want to go to the patch anyway. But, I mean, I don't really like the post-night draw patch. It's very loud in there.
It's very loud.
They get the live music going. But during the day, in between morning, afternoon, and afternoon, evening, it gets a little rowdier in the evening, but not uncomfortably rowdy. But certainly between the morning and afternoon draw, if there's probably, I don't think they do up close and personals at that point of the day. They might do an autograph session. Up close and personals tend to be after the afternoon draw because the teams are done. The teams that are coming to do are done for the day. And after the morning draw, none of the teams are done yet. So maybe a little less likely for them to do that. So look out for the schedule, but I would say, just make the most of that. And in terms of the sound, Scott, you talked about listening to the skips, so you can get close enough to listen to the skips. The thing that always stands out to me live is the sound of the sweeping. They can make so much noise. They're so strong, these players, that the sound of the brushing really stands out to me. So I would certainly pay attention to that, and pay attention to other little things like how the players are releasing the stone, how they're so positive, they're getting so much spin. Count the rotations
Yeah.
of the handle compared to if you play yourself, how many rotations you or a typical player at the recreational level gets. It really is a different experience. If you have a stopwatch timing the stones from when they kick out to the hog or hog to hog, that's a lot of fun where you can kind of try to trace the ice, map the ice yourself and follow along with the players. A lot of people like to do that. So kind of just get into the game as much as you can, and it's different. It really is different. So that's kind of the best advice in terms of a 14-year-old coming to Canada for the first time. I don't know London well enough to say you definitely have to do this, you definitely have to do that. But certainly I'm sure there's a lot of really fun stuff in London. The hotel at the Armory is cool.
Yeah. I think the players will be staying at the Armory. I feel like they did when we were there for the Continental Cup, because I went to get some beer downtown and saw them.
Okay.
Yes, I saw them at the Ale House, which I don't think I'd recommend. It's kind of whatever.
Right.
Coming to Canada for the first time, though, you got to get some Tim Hortons donuts.
Yeah. Caramel bar.
Yeah.
Ketchup chips.
Eat some ketchup chips for sure. That.
All dressed chips. I believe all dressed are Canadian too.
That's right, they are. And try to find some good poutine.
Yeah.
London, I don't know if they're going to have great poutine, but
as long as it's cheese curds, that's really the key. Anyone who tries to pass off grated cheese is a liar.
That's ridiculous,
and can get out.
Is a liar. Yeah.
So I think those are our main tips for going to a curling event for the first time.
Yeah, if maybe Steph will have some better London tips than we do.
Yeah.
And so we can let you know on next week's podcast if there's any hot London tips.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps with your planning a little bit, Philip. And thanks for reaching out. And if anyone else has ideas for Philip on what a first timer at a curling event should be doing, certainly let us know, and we will talk about it in future episodes. And if you want to listen to those future episodes, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Do the likes, ratings, comments, all that stuff. Helps other people find the show and keeps us growing. Of course, follow along on social media at Game of Stones Pod, Twitter, Instagram, Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook. Head over to gameofstonespod.com. All of our past episodes are there, and you can reach out, Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com. Scott, we have been back on the ice for a couple games since the last time we chatted. And I feel comfortable talking about this because it's in the past. It's nothing I have to continue.
Nothing in the future.
The first 13 ends that I played this season, this year, 2023, did not give up a point. And you could say, well, okay, Jason Gunlickson does that. But the difference is that we were trying to score, which isn't always the case. So
yeah,
I don't think I've ever had a run like that. And you were part of 9 of those ends.
That's right.
Have you ever had a run of the 9 ends without giving up a point?
I mean, the only time I can remember having such a dominant stretch, not necessarily giving up 0 points, was when my friend Zoe wanted me to join a Learn to Curl league with her when we lived in Vancouver, I would say 16 or more years ago. And we played Saturdays at Marpole, and there was times when I would say, like, okay, let's just hit this one or whatever. And we had a guy play third for us whose name was Eugene. And Eugene would always say, but Scott, if you put another one in there, they'll be devastated. And I was like, well, am I trying to devastate someone on a Saturday morning? we're already up by many points. I think I'm good, Eugene. So, playing that in that league with Zoe and Eugene, we had some dominant streaks, but nothing really compared to what we had earlier this year, given the level of competition against which we played.
Right. Yeah, it was 2 good teams that we played on the Monday, and it was a pretty good team on the Thursday that I played against, and just got a lot of breaks, like a ton of breaks, certainly on the Thursday. So I was happy when the streak came to an end on Monday and we gave up a point, because then I feel no pressure of Thursday when I go play tomorrow night of being like, no, like they could score 4 in the first time. I'm like, well, at least the streak was over.
So be it. Yeah. No, I felt I've felt really good playing this year, especially since the break. I don't know. I feel like I'm hitting the broom and throwing the right weight. And what more can you really do, right? We had a shot, sort of hack weight hit on a rock that was half buried.
Yep.
And once I made that, I was like, yeah, okay, I get this. I know the ice. I know the speed, and didn't look back.
Yeah, and you hate to put too much pressure on early shots, but I think that was the game, really.
I think so, yeah.
They, I would say at our level, that's a steal at least half the time, maybe even more on where that rock was. And you made the beautiful shot, get the multiple, and that was that, really. Like,
yeah, which is weird because it was the second end, but
yeah,
it felt good.
Yeah, sure. Second, I would blank the first, get that multiple, and then we were off to the races. I feel like Jesse, who we play with, in the 5th, 6th end, felt we were getting maybe a little too cute at times.
Yes, he did. Yes.
With what we were doing, because like, we're fine, we're gonna win. So we got maybe a little loose on some of the strategy calls, but hey, it happens sometimes.
Well, Sean, I was just like, well, it's working. Like,
yeah.
Our draws are working. Like, let's just play more of them.
Let's get cocky,
Yeah, let's step on the throats. And anyway, it's been a good run, and we hope to continue it and not fall prey to our curse that we did earlier.
No, but again, this is over. It's over. It already was broken. Nothing to worry about in terms of that. And it can show up. I can show up tomorrow night, and doesn't matter. At least I have this in my back pocket. We could lose 10-0. Exactly. Be like, well, I didn't give up a point for 13 ends. So
I'm still plus on the year. So
yeah, it's a nice buffer there. So there you go. So we've been having some good games. If you've been out there playing, hope you have as well. And we'll be back with you next week to talk a lot more curling. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final.